We would stand up as the eyes and ears of the battlefield. And so I was behind the screen and just tracking all that from day 2 for quite some time.
How long did that last?
That lasted for 2.5 months. About 3 months. Just battle tracked. Just looking at little dots on the screen. If it's a purple triangle, that means it's an earthquake. If it's a blue circle, that means it's one of our vehicles. You can hover over it and see how fast it's going, who's in it, how many sensitive items they have, and how fast they're going. You can send them a text message and tell them to slow down if you want. A lot of technology.
So what happened after the 3 months went by?
After the 3 months went by, I got really tired of that. Not tired of just doing the job, but just tired of being so intimately close with what we were sent there to do, but only being able to interact with it electronically. That didn't satisfy my patriotic side.
Yeah. We'll let him go by.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, you know, I wanted to know why we were there. I wanted to fight for the freedoms that I knew that I was taking advantage of every day before I joined. And clicking around on a computer and serving as an admin guy in the ops center wasn't enough for me.
So what did you do?
So I pissed off my commander. Everyone asked him, can we go out? Can we actually be part of the convoys of the engineers that we are, And he essentially said no to everyone. But the bottom line was that the standard for blast exposure was such that if a soldier had been in or around or involved within maybe 100 yards of a blast, after 3, they were at a risk of severe concussion and other medical conditions. And that was happening on a daily basis. So after so much time, there weren't any more guys that hadn't been around 3 explosions. So we were starting to lose people that we could count on. So we needed more. And instead of pulling them from the rear, we pulled them from within. So in an effort to be one of these people that they needed to go out and help, to be the little blue dot on the screen instead of being the guy at the office clicking on it, I knew that I had to basically piss my commander off so that I could get his attention. So he flew in one day on his way from one place to the next, and it must have been maybe 9 o'clock, but I was working night shift. So he's watching a movie from like 10 to 12 and probably hadn't slept in 2 days. He didn't even say anything to me, sitting right beside me. And then he goes in and says, I'm going to go to sleep. I need you to wake me up at like 0400 to catch a flight out somewhere else. And I woke him up at 03, an hour early. And when I rattled on his door, I said, sir, you asked me to wake up at 04. He said, what time is it? I was like, it's 03. He just looked at me. I was like, and while I have your attention, and I requested to essentially do more. I told him I was more than physically and more than mentally capable and more than willing to go out there and support the troops that were on the ground. And I can't promise I'm not going to make any mistakes, but I promise that I'm going to do the absolute best job. And essentially, he wouldn't regret sending me out there. And the next morning, my administrative and logistic operations center major called me in and he told me that I was going to be attached to an active duty company from Germany for about 100 days or for the remainder, and that they needed me, and I didn't know what I was going to be doing, but I was going to start the following day. And so things changed after that.
Tell anybody at home?
My brother, my older brother. I was the only person I told, my older brother. Everyone else just needed to know where I was and how I was doing. It's important to let someone know the details, but, like on my emergency contact form, I have do not contact my mother because I don't want to give her a heart attack. You know, my brother, I think he kind of keeps himself more calm and collected and removes emotion from important decisions. And so when it comes to letting him know details about what's going on with me, if it involves any measure of danger, he's my go-to. So we talk on a daily basis, and yeah, I told him.
So tell me what happened the next morning.
So the next morning, they asked me to find a battle buddy to go with me, who would be with me for this entire 100-day attachment. And so I grabbed my buddy, Brendan Lochran, and who was a 21 Bravo, who was also a combat engineer, but he was stuck in an office down the hall from me. So we both packed our bags, and so we get on this helicopter and we fly out to the middle of nowhere to this small little operations post. And when we walked up to the hooch where we were supposed to be stationed, there were maybe like 15 guys sitting out front. And I remember nudging them and I said, if you tell them I'm an admin guy, yeah, you have to deal with me. So we walked up and one guy said, you know, like, what do you guys do? Like, you know, why are they sending us 2 people? Like, what do you do? What's your MOS? What's your job? I said, we do whatever needs to be done. And walked right on in and so, yeah, that's how that started.
So tell me what you did.
That night, the platoon sergeant of this company stuck his head through the window, or through the opening in the door, and he said, do you know how to drive and do you have a license to drive? I said, yes. And he handed me a thumb drive, and he told me on that was the TM, or the manual for a vehicle called a Husky, which essentially is a mine detection vehicle. And he told me to read up on it, learn everything I needed to know about it, as far as PMCS, operations, maintenance, and get ready because I was going to be driving it in the morning. So I did.
You can go.
Right. Yeah, I was a little bit surprised when I realized that the axles were only semi-attached to the vehicle. They weren't bolted in tightly. They were loosened so that essentially when ammunition went off under the vehicle, it would break away from the hub of the vehicle. So that was interesting to know that I'm learning how to drive a vehicle that's meant to blow up. That was...
Like a race car. Dissipates energy.
Yeah. I guess a race car would be a little bit more dangerous because you're traveling fast. This vehicle, it doesn't work to detect the mine if you're going more than 6 miles an hour. So, yeah. So when you have several tons and, you know, you hit one button and the detectors go down on the sides, and you'll be on the road and another person will be on the other side of the road, and you guys will just essentially push everyone off the road and have a little overlap in the center and just scan the roads. And I remember one time I looked in the rearview mirror and I could see the other 13 vehicles in my convoy, and then maybe 10 or 15 jingle trucks, which were like their 18-wheelers in Afghanistan. And then there was a Marine Corps unit that was behind us. And then there was the Afghan National Police and the Afghan National Army, because essentially the only time that a route was considered safe was when we were on it. So that made me feel a lot more worried, because the margin for error just went down to essentially 0. You know, it's not just my life that I'm protecting here. It's everyone behind me who's depending on us to do our jobs right.
Plus you're on the bleeding edge.
Literally. The first thing.
Tell me what happens when the Husky detects something.
It's like a fish finder, essentially, because a fish finder is just trying to detect something other than water. So you could pick up a fish, but you could just as easily pick up a rock. Well, the detector for the Husky was just detecting indeficiencies in the soil type. So if there was a huge rock, I'd see it. But I wouldn't know if it was a Russian mine that was 40 years old and buried under a foot of dirt, or if it was a natural rock that was, just peeking the surface. I wouldn't know. So it's got two settings. One is coarse and one is fine. The coarse will detect something in the general area. So when you're driving, you're listening to a constant beep, like beep. And when you roll over something, it goes ee, and you'll stop. And then you'll click it to fine. You'll get on the radio and call all stop to the convoy, and everyone behind you will stop. And then you'll slowly back up over it on fine until it goes ee. And as soon as you get that highest peak, you press the paint button, and there's little spray paints that come out, and they spray around the area that you're detecting, and then you get the hell off of it because you don't know what it is. So you pinpoint as fast as you can, you spray paint the general area that it's in, and then you move over, maybe 100 yards away, and you let the next vehicle come in and start taking up the ground and finding out what's under there.
Now, is it worse to be the first vehicle, or is it worse to be the guy that went there digging?
At times, every position's the worst. Because as soon as they figure out that one person's here, I'll tell you what, the enemy is smart. They're smart. They don't have a lot of tools, but the few that they do have, they use them very wisely. First, it's easy to hit the first guy. Then all the rest of the people can't go past you. But sometimes it's best to hit the person in the middle because essentially you've disabled half of the convoy. Now you've separated a group, which is even more dangerous because now we're only effective as a unit. So it's just as dangerous to be any vehicle. It's hard to recover the last person because no one's behind you and you're so far away from everyone else. So I'd say in the beginning, the middle, and the end is all just as dangerous.
Now, when you went out and got in the Husky, was anybody in there that knew? Was there somebody to tell you how to do it?
Nope.
You just fired that bad boy up and started looking for mine?
You know what? I must have overlooked one thing, and it was, first of all, the vehicle is just a single-person vehicle. So you climb up the back, and you open the doors this way, and you climb down in it, and then you bring the steering wheel in, and you put the steering wheel on, and then you shut the doors. And so I remember the first mission that I went out in the Husky, I was pulling outside of the fob. We had gotten clearance from the entry control point, and we were pulling out, and as I was starting to turn, the steering wheel came off. And I guess I just missed that part in the manual, that when you put the steering wheel on, you're supposed to click this button down that keeps it from coming off. But I didn't say anything, but I didn't know how to put the steering wheel back on because I couldn't get it to stay. Every time I tried to turn it, it would come off. And so I couldn't keep it flat. So for a while, I was doing this until I figured out that this clip was going down and locking it in place. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is how I'm going to start. Yeah, I know. Yeah, so.
All right, now you're driving along. What was it, when you heard that first boom, you knew you had to put it on fine and back up?
Yeah. When I first started, because you can't be in the vehicle with anyone else, it's hard to get on the job training because it's a one-man thing. You read what it's supposed to sound like, but the only time you hear it is when you're the only one in the vehicle and you're moving. So we did some training backing up and going forward inside of the like the parking lot, the parking area for all our tactical vehicles, the motor pool. So I had heard it, but you think you always hear it. It's just like a ringing in your ears after a while. And so you're at kind of a crossroads between, do I stop the entire convoy every 5 minutes because I'm being extremely particular about, about the accuracy in which I do my job, or do I try to move as fast as I can from one place to the next and cross my fingers and hope I'm doing it right? It's 6 miles an hour. If you've got a mission and you're going 30 kilometers, it's going to take you 10 hours if you don't find anything. If you think you see something every kilometer, it's going to take you 18 hours to do all those interrogations. So when I first started, I would check really quickly, but it only took one time making a mistake for me to totally change the way I do business.
Oh.
And that was that.
Did you ever find yourself looking in the mirror and going, I left what to come here and do what?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I was a human resource guy driving lead vehicle in a convoy looking for munitions that I didn't even know what they looked like. I had a book and a thumb drive and orders. That was it. That's not what I expected. So yeah, I definitely took a good look in the mirror and said, am I biting off too much? Am I so confident in my ability to do what I have not been formally trained to do that I'm willing to put somebody else's life on it?
Your own.
Yeah, that's a hell of a question.
How did you do?
I didn't mess anything up. I'm here. Everybody I ever worked with directly is here.